Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Friday, October 11th, 2024. Jason Priestis, Chris Lauderback, Kyle Jones on the show. How are you guys?
Excited, man. It's a big weekend. It's game day. It's the weekend we've been waiting for basically all year. You know, everything was kind of an appetizer leading up to this. And now we're getting the meat of the schedule now. This is fun.
Yeah, all year we were talking about you got to get through those first 5 games are a layup, and then the season starts with week 6, and like all of a sudden it's here. So feeling really excited. And now we've got the biggest Saturday so far on Ohio State's schedule.
Indeed, huge show today. Ohio State's season starts in earnest with a massive game at Oregon tomorrow. Michigan's still wobbling. We're going to talk about that, and the SEC better be thankful for the Texas Longhorns. But guys, this is week 1. With all due respect to Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa, and others, Ohio State's season truly starts now. Chris, you just mentioned it. Get through the first 5. This is it. We've all had it circled on the calendar since last season, basically. Clash of 2 of the 9 remaining unbeatens in Power 4 conferences. Winner will have a massive leg up to play in the Big Ten championship game. Got College Game Day on site. It's instantly the 60th time for the Bucks. They're 40-19, the most wins of any program when College Game Day is on site. And heard this from Stuart Mandel yesterday. First top 3 game on NBC since 1993's FSU Notre Dame game of the century.
Well,
it's here, and I couldn't be more excited for it. Team feels that way as well. Here's what Ryan Day had to say.
Well, I think it's great because you get to control your own destiny because you're playing the best teams in the league on our schedule, and so that part's great. Every time you're playing one of these teams, you're fighting for an opportunity to go to Indianapolis, and that's important. So there's that part of it. Then there's obviously the playoff scenario. So a lot at stake this weekend, which is exactly the way we want it.
Day seems pretty locked in. Is that your read, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've circled this game just as much as we all have, right? Like they've probably put in more time and effort into this game in the offseason as any game other than maybe Michigan, and perhaps even more given the state of things. So there's no doubt in my mind that they know the gravity of this contest and what it means for the season, even though, of course, we're in a 12-team playoff. What he said today about getting that Big Ten, that leg up in the Big Ten race and potentially getting that first round bye in December, they know that just as much as anybody. And so I got to imagine they've been hammering this and focused on this weekend more than anybody out there.
For sure. And here's what Will Howard had to say on the stakes for this game.
Come to a place like Ohio State, you want to play on the biggest stage, College Game Day, all the hype, 2 versus 3 matchup, like this is what you sign up for, and this is what I was looking forward to. And it's a challenge, man. It's fun. This is what college football is all about. This is what you dream about as a kid, man. Like just being on this stage, playing in front of a ton of people and a ton of people watching on TV. Like it's a dream, man, and it's definitely a big reason why I came here.
Chris, just like Day, he seems dialed, and this is a big game for Will Howard.
Yeah, like he said, this is what he came here for, and this is the first kind of prove it game, the first matchup game for him to take part of while being at Ohio State. So to me, he sounds like a guy that's really confident, a guy that, you talked about the first 5 games, kind of not dismissively, but like, hey, those were just, kind of appetizers for tomorrow. But I think because of the way Ohio State played those first 5 games, they were really nice building blocks, whether it was for Howard to get some roots down or for the offensive line to build some confidence or for Jeremiah to get some experience. All those things have put them in this position where they all seem like they're hungry. They're taking their lead from Day, where it's kind of like, hey, let's be the hunter instead of the hunted kind of thing. And it feels like that's what you hear from Howard getting his first chance to really play in a big game at Ohio State.
For sure. And Denzel Burke, man, here's what he had to say on the stakes.
Yeah, man, you shake a little more, especially in the big-time games, but those are the moments I'm built for, and those are the moments I'm really ready for. And I've been playing in big games my entire life, and really just go out there and play football, man, and do what we got to do, and, be the best version of myself Saturday night.
Pretty measured for Denzel Burke. That lets you know it's a pretty big game, Kyle, because normally he's got a flamethrower. He's not afraid to put it out there. He still said some stuff, but a little surprised to hear he shakes a little.
Well, I mean, that's going to be the atmosphere, right? This is a guy who's played at Penn State. He's played at Michigan. He's played in all the big atmospheres in the classic Big Ten. I'm sure he knows that this is a huge game, not just for Ohio State season and, a big reason why he came back. But, again, this is the guy who's trying to show the NFL scouts that this is what I can do. And Evan Stewart and this Oregon offense is as good a test as he's probably going to see in the regular season, to be honest with you. I'm sure Indiana fans are going to tell me otherwise, but in terms of the talent on that side of the ball, he wants to put on the show and he wants to show that he's, cornerback number one, when the draft comes in May. So I'm sure he's got dual motivation and he's probably not barking too much, doesn't want to get out too in front of this. He wants to put on a show.
And, we've had Ryan Day, Will Howard, Denzel Burke, all saying the right things, seeing the enormity of this game. Let's go to Josh Fryar here, what he has to say.
I'm not a big, I don't like it on national television because if you get messed up, everybody knows. The reporters, the announcers, everybody.
Oh boy, Chris, I get what he's saying. He's trying to be human a little bit, but I think if there's a dog meter nearby, it's like no dog.
I was going to say, that, like, you hear from those other guys, you hear from Day and Howard and Burke, and you just hear alpha, and this is just like not alpha. Just why are they putting them out there? Like, I don't know. Actions speak louder than words. We'll see how it goes on Saturday, but I'm just like, good Lord, dude, just don't say stuff like that.
Josh Fryar, man of the people, letting everyone know he's just like us. He gets nervous. It's okay. But you said it, man. Actions speak louder than words, and we'll have to see how he plays. Last clip here from Ryan Day. I love this one.
We've had good, 2 good days right here, and guys have been edgy, which is what you want. And coaches have been edgy. So that's good. We're going to get back on the film here and figure out what corrections we need to make and where we need to enhance the things we did well, and keep grinding, keep preparing as we head into Saturday.
I love that quote. I love hearing him say, everybody's edgy. Everybody wants to be right. Everyone's ready to go.
Yeah, man, this is a team that's trying to prove something. Ever since last year, again, the way the season ended last year, they all came back for this. Obviously, it wasn't like you could go out on a high with the bowl game. It was different than the 2 years prior, right, where they could kind of wash the taste out of their mouth. Even though the Georgia game didn't go the way they wanted, it was still a good showing 2 seasons ago. Last year, just a poor ending. And I think they've kind of been out of the limelight of the first 5 weeks. I think everybody in the national scene has kind of known that, Ohio State season really doesn't start until they go to Eugene. So I think this is a team where they know, hey, the eyes are back on us for probably the first time since, we went up to Ann Arbor last Thanksgiving weekend. It's been 10 plus months since then, 10 and a half months almost, that they've probably been sitting there waiting. So yeah, I'd say they're edgy. Like, I would hope so. You guys have been working all off season pretty much with this being that first test where you can show everybody this is why we came back. This is who we are.
Yeah, I totally agree. You stole it from the same thing. This is about kind of like what I said earlier. This is a spotlight game, like you mentioned, and it's a chance to, again, be the hunter instead of the hunted, embrace the expectations. This is what these guys came back for, is to win every game. Win the national championship, yes, but they want to win every game and to go out there with an attitude that, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to prepare to do it the right way so that we can do it come Saturday. I just feel like they're all taking their cues from the head coach, who's just got he's just screaming a different vibe this year. And again, talk is talk. We'll see if walk is walk, but they're minus Fryar. I feel like they're saying all those things you want to hear, and it's just increasing the confidence that I already have that Ohio State's going to prove to be the better team on Saturday.
Yeah, heading west, man. Some advantages and some disadvantages for this trip. The disadvantage, let's start with that one, because Columbus is, 2,057 miles from Eugene, Oregon. That's 3 time zones. Lots been written on 11 Warriors and other places about how the Big Ten teams are 2-10 overall and 1-8 in league games this season when a team has to travel 2 or more time zones to play. The 2 wins came in the first 2 games of this type this year. UCLA went to Hawaii and won, and then Indiana went out to UCLA and won 42-13 early in the year. But the Big Ten teams are 0-8 in this scenario since, and we see it every week. Like, one of the West Coast teams comes east and they just have a bad game. Are you guys concerned at all about that?
I'm not personally concerned with it. I think it'd be different, certainly a factor. I think Day has said they're going to try to do what they can to stay on East Coast time. I think that the fact that it's a night game probably helps. I mean, these are college kids. These aren't, us or me. It's not a 50-year-old man trying to adjust to this. So I think if it was, a Fox Big Noon kind of scenario and you're playing at, 9 in the morning or something, then yeah, that might be a little bit different thing. But to play at what will essentially be 4:30 Eastern if you stay on that clock, well, I guess it'd be the inverse of that, but I feel like these guys they're young enough. They've got a plan. They're going to be fine, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami kind of took that, excuse away from a time zone thing. Like, yeah, they struggled with Cal last week in that game that everybody saw. But I mean, Miami had to play at at 10:30 Eastern time last weekend, or when they went to play in Berkeley, and they were able to come up with a dub. So like, I don't know. This feels like one of those things that, like, yes, I recognize that the Ohio State volleyball team traveling west, on Southwest, connecting through Midway, is not probably excited about this trip. And I don't, that's a whole other discussion versus the chartered 777 that they're flying out there, staying in a high end hotel with the football team where they're flying right back. Like, I think those are two different road trips. And I think, look at 25 years ago. Randomly, a clip that came up for me was like, Ohio State played at the Rose Bowl against UCLA in 2001 in Jim Tressel's first year. I don't recall the same, worry about an Ohio State team having to travel 2 time zones away 20 some years ago. We're making a lot out of this for a reason, but like, I don't know. They've got all the travel accommodations. They've traveled before. If this was a non-conference game, I don't think anyone would be talking about it, honestly. If you want to talk about why those teams have struggled going west, it's because they've been bad teams going to play better teams out west. With the exception of Indiana going out to UCLA, it's been a bad Michigan team, a bad Wisconsin team. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we're seeing. And so that's a bigger story for me versus, is this travel related? I think you're just seeing teams that are down playing against new opponents that they're just simply not familiar with.
That's a great take. Here's what Ryan Day had to say about the situation this week.
Really see it as much of a challenge that way. I think it's a 4.5-hour flight. It's a couple hours more than Nebraska, and we're going to stay on East Coast time, and I think we got a good plan. We're going to stay on our time schedule, and it, the way that, with the time of the game and everything fits kind of how we practice. So, we're not going to look too much into it.
Chris, I love that mindset of just basically saying, it's just a slightly longer flight than the Nebraska flight.
Right. You can try to manufacture excuses or problems, or you can plan for whatever variable that is and buy into it and go. And I think that's what they're doing. If Ohio State loses a game on Saturday, it's not because of when it kicked off. I understand it's different from bowl games. You can get out there, you're out there for a week, you adjust, right? It's a little bit different. And you're probably, playing a good opponent in those scenarios. But I don't know, man. I think Day's got the right mindset of just like, hey, let's move on from this. It's not really a story. We got a plan, and we're going to go out there and execute.
Yeah, worth noting, Ohio State is 26-17-1 on the West Coast all time. But Chris, as you touched on, many of those are Rose Bowl appearances with some more time to acclimate to the time zone change. They have won their last 4 games on the West Coast, though 3 were Rose Bowl games. One of them, of course, was the Cal game in 2012 when Berkeley was overrun by Buckeye fans, and I don't think any of us will ever forget the sight of that stadium. Some of the advantages: familiarity. Chip Kelly obviously coached at Oregon from 2009 to 2012, leading him to a BCS championship game, going 46-7, winning 3 PAC conferences. Also coached against Oregon in 2022 against Lanning when he was with UCLA. Oregon won that game 45-30. Ducks had 30 points, almost 200 yards rushing, nearly 450 total yards. But Kelly even said this week that a lot of those yards came when Oregon was in a bit of a soft zone after going up 31-13 at the half. Kyle, what advantages can Chip Kelly bring to this team, given his past?
Well, I think he's going to understand the basic structures of what Dan Lanning's trying to do. Lanning comes from Kirby Smart and Nick Saban land. That's, he was obviously the Georgia DC, and anybody who knows those systems knows there's a lot in them. This is not the Kerry Combs 4-3. Let's play cover 3 and cover 1, pretty straightforward. It's quite the opposite. And so I think if nothing else, even though, it's different players, and I think Lanning, they've definitely changed a little bit. They've evolved since Lanning's first year, 2 years ago, this game we're talking about. At least they understand, there's a familiarity with that structure, how they use certain types of personnel, what the scenarios where they're going to, when are they going to bring in a 4th linebacker because they base out of a 3-4 look, and when are they going to play a nickel? It's those little things that aren't necessarily going to change, be a surprise, but allows you to get a little bit of a jump start knowing, hey, this might be different from years past, what they're doing this year. Let's look at why that might be different. And, as they're assembling the game plan, this past week, that's the opportunity to say, hey, here's a place for us to take advantage. This is something that maybe they're not as confident in or familiar in as a program. Maybe it's a new body. Maybe they're trying something out. So, there is familiarity. It's probably not going to be the game changer, but it certainly helps.
Carlos Lachlan, the running back coach at Ohio State, spent the previous 2 seasons on Lanning's Oregon staff. So might know even more. Chip might have some tendencies and know about what they might do on D, may know about like where's the best place to get Italian dinner on Friday night when you get into town, things like that. Lachlan probably has a much more intimate knowledge of like how Lanning prepares, what he's thinking, what he's probably going to look at and try to attack offensively and defensively. And Day was asked about that this week, and he said, quote, yeah, they have good information. And, when you're somewhere, you have a feel for the place. And that feel for the place is kind of what I was just talking about. I appreciate Chris, his candor and saying, yeah, they have just came out and said, yeah, it's a bonus, man. Because some coaches, I don't know if they would say that. They would,
they would downplay it. And I don't think it's a difference between a win or a loss, but yeah, any information you can get is good, right? And you got a little bit of inside intel on just even, how they might prep for a big game like that or like this and that kind of thing. So I don't, it certainly isn't going to hurt. I don't know that it's the ultimate difference maker, but yeah, you'll take what you can get. And, you joked about the dinner, but I think, the micro is kind of on the field, right? It's the X's and O's and all that. But I think the macro is still something too. When you just think about, the lay of the land, the lay of the stadium, getting in and out, whatever, all those things, right? It still helps to have some familiarity there that, Day probably doesn't have otherwise.
The Buckeyes also got some help on the way. Carnell Tate expected to return after missing the Iowa game. He's got 14 for 219 this season with a touchdown. Day loves the kid. You can tell, he said this week, quote, he had a good day of practice today. That was on Wednesday. He's certainly very talented, very good route runner, runs downfield, runs underneath, runs after the catch. He's a leader. It's great to have him back. Can't overstate, Kyle, what it's like to get a guy like that back.
Yeah, he changes the offense a little bit. It was noticeable when he wasn't there last week what they were doing in the passing game. It was more simplified. There's no question about it. Even though they did run more 2 tight end sets with Kazmarek and G. Scott out there, which, look, I thought they did a great job packaging it up. And, I talked about that in my film study yesterday, and where, they had some nice packages with that personnel. And I wouldn't be shocked to see a lot of 12 personnel, this weekend, just, for reasons we can get into later. But, when you need to throw the ball, to have a guy like Tate, I think he is, to Dave's point, probably the best downfield route runner. And that's going to be confusing because everyone thinks, that's Jeremiah Smith, the big play guy. What I mean by that is it's that getting that separation on a backside dig. It's that 12-yard comeback that we saw Chris Olave run so many times, right? It's very similar to that. How can I use my body to separate and get an extra yard to help my quarterback, right? And that's what Tate does really well, even for a guy who hasn't played a ton. And so when you've got that makes it that much easier for Jeremiah Smith to get open over the top or open things up for Ibuka underneath. So, it allows the passing game to be a little bit more diverse and to do some different things when, there's probably going to be more third and passing situations than we've seen this season. So to have that weapon is huge.
That's great insight. And how nice is it to have Tate on the opposing team's third best cover guy? Because Emeka and Jeremiah, in some fashion, probably Jeremiah, Emeka in that order now, will draw 1 and 2. And then your third guy, you're like, man, he's all right. He's not the other 2 guys. He's not the best guy. And all of a sudden you turn to Carnell Tate loose on him. Chris, Tyleik Williams came back for the Iowa game, made his presence felt. Here's Day on his return. He said, quote, he's solid, just getting his hands on people, knocking people back. I thought he and Ty Hamilton were really good in the game, along with a few other guys too. It was good to get him back inside, and obviously you could feel his presence in there. Is he the best defensive player on the team through 5 games? Are you guys comfortable making that statement right now?
To me, it's here Downs. I think Downs is, for me, the best player on the defense, but Tyleik he's a game wrecker. The thing about Tyleik that is so valuable is that he has his own production, but the game he was out, how did Styles look? How did Simon look, right? Like, I just feel like he does a lot to occupy some traffic beyond his own disruption, beyond his own playmaking. He can create some sight lines. He can create some freedom where, you don't need these linebackers to necessarily shed a block because there's nobody there blocking them now, kind of thing. And that's Ty Hamilton too. But I think Tyleik is just, the dude's amazing. And when he wasn't there, I think was the biggest sign of how important he is, just as much as when he wasn't there. So yeah, having him back for a game like this against, really, if we're talking about Oregon's offensive line, I know we will later, but the interior of that line, particularly center and left guard, I feel like those are matchup problems for Oregon, right? That center is, I can't remember which one's from East Carolina, and these guys do not have PFF grades that are very good, and they're not Hulks. I feel like Ty and Tyleik could they could be the difference in the game on Saturday.
And Day said Tyleek, can rush the passer as good as anybody on the inside in the entire country. So strong words. And Kyle, you were shaking your head. You're not ready quite to say that Tyleek's the best player, the most important player on the defense?
Well, I think Chris named the guy who I would name, and that's Caleb Downs. I think he doesn't have a 90-yard pick six. He doesn't have a crazy, forced fumble, but I mean, he is everywhere. I mean, he does stuff that just really, it's kind of crazy to watch. Jeff Schwartz, who, NFL analyst, went to Oregon. He's been tweeting out every week, a key to the game. And yesterday what he tweeted out was like, hey, Ohio State safeties are a problem. Like, they are NFL safeties. And he's talking about Downs and Ransom, who, by the way, I think has been awesome this year. If Downs is 1A, Ransom might be 1B in terms of who's been, who the best player on this defense has been. That's just how disruptive he's been. But, what Schwartz was saying was, you typically don't account for safeties in a blocking scheme at the college level. You have to account for them as an offensive line when you've got Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom coming around. And that's a credit to their athleticism, their instincts. And so, look, I love Tyleek. I think he's awesome for all the reasons Chris, mentioned. I think Tyleek could absolutely be the difference in this game, winning a one-on-one matchup against an offensive line that's had some trouble finding, its chemistry this season. But I'm just not willing to say that the best player on this defense and maybe the best player on this team isn't number two.
All right, we've got, just had an intro segment. We've already gone into a lot of this game, but there's so much more to talk about. Number 2, Ohio State at number 3, Oregon. Just the 5th matchup for OSU as a 2 versus 3. Don't look at the last 3 because they've all been disasters. 2022 and 2023, they lost as the number 2 to number 3 Michigan, but those have asterisks next to them. 2019, hell, that's got an asterisk too. That's the game they lost to Clemson in the bowl, 29-23. We're going to put an asterisk. There's 3 asterisks. And then, of course, 2016 when Curtis Samuel did his thing and they beat Michigan 30-27 in double overtime. They were a 2 versus 3, won that one. Autzen Stadium, 7:30 kickoff time. That's 4:30 local time. The Crack 11 Warriors research team tells us sunset locally at 6:52 p.m. So going to have a fourth quarter in the dark. That'll be pretty fun. Game, of course, broadcast on NBC. Bucks by 3 right now. Perfect weather, 72 degrees. I had to double take. I'm is this real? For this time, Pacific Northwest in mid-October, but 72, 0 chance of rain, a 10-mile-an-hour wind. Just perfect football weather. Ducks coached by Dan Lanning, 27-5 in his 3rd season. Guys, he's got some really cool facts. And I'm going to admit, I'm a big Dan Lanning fan. Because I like his Xbox calls. He calls games those Washington games last year when he's just I'm going for it on 4th, doesn't matter. He calls it like a teenager does Xbox. And that's fun to watch. I'm kind of glad he's not my coach when he's making those calls, but grew up a Chiefs fan in KC area, played NAIA football at William Jewell. And this is, we're in this business. I feel like I know a lot of colleges guys, but I never heard the name William Jewell until I was looking into his past. Had you guys heard of it?
Richard Jewell's the only Jewell I think I know.
Is that the dude from the Atlanta Olympics? You going deep on us, man? The guy that was framed? The guy they framed, Richard Jewell? They did that movie and made him look great. Yep. He was just trying to save people, man. Let Richard Jewell live a little bit.
Cold.
But he went to William Jewell in Liberty, Missouri. You look at his track record, man. It's fun to look at, a guy's Wikipedia page and you see where they've coached. And every stop, he's in one minor position. All of a sudden, oh yeah, you're running our recruiting department, or you're our DC now. At ASU, he went from recruiting or GA to recruiting coordinator in 1 year. Georgia went from outside linebackers coach to DC in 1 year. Clearly one of those guys. You're yep, that guy, he gets life. He's bust his ass. He's smart. He's sharp. Known maybe more as a recruiter than an X's and O's guys. Kyle, you might want to weigh in on that, but that's kind of my take there.
Yeah, I think in the scheme community, this guy and maybe it's just a volume thing, but this guy, you can find dozens of coaching clinics online. He does not shy away from going, picking up the whiteboard, picking up the marker and sketching things out on the whiteboard. I think that's probably in itself a little bit of a recruiting tactic to get all the high school coaches to love him. But, he can talk ball and he knows what he's doing. There's no doubt about it. That's what happens when you work for Kirby and, in the Saban tree. You can't be a dummy to be on that defensive staff.
Chris, he's got 3 sons, Caden, Niles, and Titan. Do you realize how big your balls have to be to name a kid Titan?
Well, Niles, what, it starts with a K? Like he's got the silent K in front? Yeah.
Little homage to Evil Knievel, maybe. I don't know. But Titan, I just can't get over Titan. Like we're gonna call that one Titan. Like he better like be a dude in life, you know? Like if he's like an underachiever, like there's Titan. He still lives
like
at home
a
at 35.
Accountant. Yeah.
Lives at home at 35. His name's Titan. We're like, we're gonna give you a new name, buddy. Respect that. Bucks lead the series 9-1. This will be the 11th meeting. Oregon won the last game they played, 2021 in Columbus, 35-20. That's the only team to ever defeat a Ryan Day Ohio State team before Thanksgiving, which is an insane stat by itself. But there you go. And different coach there at the time, obviously. And looking into the past, man, these teams have played some really important games. 2015, obviously, Zeke went off on them, and OSU won the first CFP national championship in Arlington, Texas. Then you go way back, and OSU's first meeting with him was a 10-7 win in the 1958 Rose Bowl that capped Woody's first national championship season. So two teams that, you know, haven't met a ton, but when they've met, there's been quite a bit on the line. How the Ducks got here, won their opener 24-14 over Idaho. I know a lot of us watched that, and you were watching that, and you're like, that's a little closer than we'd probably like to see. Then they beat Boise State 37-34. Ducks had to score the last 10 points of that game, kicked a winning field goal with basically no time on the clock. You look now, Boise's ranked 17th. They're 4-1, clearly a good program. And Ducks would follow that up with a 49-14 win at Oregon State. Then they had a week off, went down and beat UCLA 34-13. And then their most recent game, I guess it was a week ago today, they beat Michigan State in Oregon 31-10. Chris, what are some similarities you can draw from that game with the common opponent of Michigan State?
Yeah, I mean, I think both teams were in control the whole time. I do think Ohio State was more dominant against Michigan State. I know the score was a little bit different than Oregon, but I don't know. I felt like Oregon was in control from the jump, and to me, pretty much said, "Hey, this Saturday is going to be a fairly even game, and we'll see who steps up and makes the biggest plays." I will say, I guess, with Gabriel, I mean, I think he had at least one red zone interception in that game. I do think as, Oregon got closer to the goal line, they kind of struggled a little bit, whereas Ohio State just ate every time they got in the red zone like they've done all season. So that might be something that maybe jumped out at me in that game was, some of the red zone success that Ohio State had that Oregon couldn't match.
Well, let's talk about Gabriel. You mentioned him. He's, seasoned as they come. And Chris, you put some of these numbers together. I didn't realize how accomplished he was. I know he'd been around for a while. He was a good quarterback. 6th year as a starting quarterback.
What does that say? What does that say real quick, right? Like in some way, it's like he's, 4th or 3rd and all these like all-time NCAA marks for yards and touchdowns, and not trying to poo-poo that. But if you're a 6-year starter in college, like, are you great? Wouldn't you already be in the NFL? Like, what does that mean?
Some merit to that. And but I personally think old quarterbacks are cheat codes. And we saw Stetson Bennett do it. Ohio State had a Chris Weinke problem years ago. I think it's a good thing, but I hear you, man. Like, if you have all these numbers and you're still playing college football, why are you not making a lot more money to play college football? Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think the 3 quarterbacks who were taken in the first round, other than J.J. McCarthy, would take some umbrage to that comment. All those guys, Bo Nix, the guy who he's replacing, was a guy who started for 5 years in college, at least. Just, it felt like he was in college for a decade, and he turns around, he's a first round pick. How he's doing with the Broncos is a different discussion, but Jaden Daniels, another guy who played a ton, Michael Penix, another guy who's, almost my age, and he's a rookie for the Falcons. So, I don't know. I feel like I understand the point, but I don't know if that argument necessarily flies. I think the question is why is he throwing picks in the red zone in his 6th year? That's the real question to be asking, which is, he does have a tendency.
I guess that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, that's like, hey, he still has this tendency to kind of lock onto a guy. I'm going to force a ball in that isn't there. He doesn't have a huge arm. He's got a good arm, but it's not a huge arm. He doesn't have, he can't throw it in there like Josh Allen or anything. So, you have to know when to take your spots. And, he's good. It seems like every game to have a couple throws where you go, what are you doing, man? And he's always been like that.
That's a fun point. I was watching the Cal Miami game. and Cam Ward made a throw. And I was like, you don't even see sixth graders make the throw across his body super late. And it's just like, it's the same thing with, what are you doing? You're old enough to know that you just eat it, throw it out of bounds, get out of the pocket, do something. He's got some pass catchers. Trey Johnson, Troy transfer ahead of the 23 season, had about 1,200 last year. He's already got almost 405 touchdowns this season, got a punt return. Got to watch. He's 5'10". Trayshawn Holden, an Alabama transfer, is 6'3". He came in a couple years ago. Got about 300 for the year and 3 touchdowns, and a tight end that, will get some looks. So the passing attack is in place, and I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth between they got some dudes to Kyle's point of why is this guy still throwing picks in the red zone as a 32-year-old quarterback in college football?
Yeah, well, they definitely have some experienced pass catchers, like you said. I mean, these guys have all been around. I think their top 3 receivers are all seniors. Tight end Terrence Ferguson is a guy that worries me a little bit, quite honestly, just with what we've seen from the linebackers in coverage a little bit when, maybe Hancock's coming off the field and some things like that. I think Ferguson's a pretty big boy himself, but seems to be very versatile. I think that's a guy to keep an eye on. And how does Ohio State deal with him in coverage? On the outside, I feel a little bit better. Those are guys, right? Those are really good receivers, but I feel really good about Ohio State on the outside. It's good to see Igbinosun get a pick last week. I'd imagine he's going to be busy Saturday. I don't know if they're going to throw it Burke all day long. So I think Igbinosun's going to have to show up and play. But Terrence Ferguson is a guy to definitely keep an eye on, I think.
Getting to their line, I mean, it seems like a group that's come along, and Jim Knowles talked a little about their offensive line, correcting some earlier mistakes. 7 sacks in the first 2 games, 0 since. Still allowed 45 TFLs. Tackles the strength of the line. Running back, Jordan James, about 6'3" a carry. But as a team, they're only getting 4.6 a carry. Put this into perspective, Kyle. Is this a mid-tier offensive line in the Big Ten, upper tier? Where do you have them?
I mean, they're still an upper tier because of those tackles. I mean, both of those tackles, they look the part. They get off the bus and you go, holy smokes. I mean, they'll probably both be NFL players. Their challenge is finding the right 5, candidly. They've had some shuffling along the interior. I believe they changed the center, which Chris mentioned. I know they've moved the guards around a little bit to try to just figure out who are those, who is the right 3. And that's part of the reason why, they struggled at the beginning of the year is because they just couldn't figure out who was supposed to be there. Since it seems like they've settled down a little bit since conference play started and they've kind of figured out who their guys are. But I mean, the strength of that offense, in my opinion, is Jordan James. I mean, that dude, he's the best running back that I think Ohio State's going to see in the regular season, or at least in the regular season with Big Ten play. He reminds me a lot of Quinshon Judkins, to be honest with you. He's got a burst. He is physical. You've got to tackle this dude. We talked about GT a little bit, but he's a guy that if you don't lay the wood and get a good grip on him, he's going to go get more yardage. And so, the question is how much can he carry the load for that team? How many carries can they, give him, in this game against a physical defense? But for Ohio State, it's really, how do you do that? And how do you not do it in a way that sells out? Because, the real bread and butter of this offense, we talked about the receivers, is they just RPO you to death. So if you start focusing on Jordan James, they're just going to throw slants behind you. They're going to throw bubble screens. They're just going to do all those little things to stress you out as a defense to help open back up Jordan James for more.
Yeah,
great. And I was just feeling good about the Ohio State's odds, and then now you got me back down again.
Yeah, I think to your point, Kyle, they've got to get him, especially on first down. It can't be 2nd and 3 all day, all night long. That's going to be a problem. He is solid. I think he is significantly better than Caleb Johnson. I mean, Ohio State bottled him up no problem. To me, that's a guy that is pretty fast, runs really upright, and is fast, but he's not shifty. He's not overly powerful. I feel like, this is a totally different challenge this weekend because this guy is shifty, but can still run you over.
Let's hope the Sonny Styles massive step against the Iowa offense pays dividends this week as well.
Tyreek being back, I think, is also just critically important.
Absolutely. Chris, let's talk about this defense a little bit. It's a veteran group, got some really good dudes, top 20 kind of aggregate across all their defensive metrics. Where do you kind of put this defense in terms of what Ohio State's seen this year or maybe what they've seen in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody points to Iowa's defense, but I think Oregon is a different level of athleticism, regardless of what position group or whatever you're talking about. These are just, they're more likely to just be dudes, right? They're athletes. So I think they're going to be a significant challenge in that aspect. I think, the secondary, I think, is probably an area that Ohio State's, hoping that they can attack. And I think this is where Carnell Tate being back is going to be a very big deal. I think I was reading some stuff Andy had wrote earlier in the week when he was kind of summarizing them. And I know they've gotten their hands on a lot of, deflections and, PBUs and that type of thing. But as far as yardage and that type of stuff, they've definitely given up some yards this year. So I do feel like this is going to be the most significant test that Ohio State has faced so far as an offense going against a better defense. But I do think there's some ways that Ohio State can score. And I think that, again, we talked about it earlier, but getting into the red zone and scoring touchdowns in the red zone when you get there against his defense will also be, pretty critical and something I think Ohio State will be able to maintain.
And they've got some dudes that we mentioned, Jordan Birch, Jordan Birch, fifth-year defensive end, massive 6'6", 295, South Carolina transfer. Late news Thursday, apparently left practice injured per Justin Hopkins, the publisher of Scoop Duck, Oregon's On3 team site. Hopkins said he asked about Birch being carted off and was told it was a, quote, excessive exaggeration of what happened. And then went on to say he was told he got nicked up and was held out of practice the rest of practice Thursday as kind of a precautionary measure. Oregon's Rivals writer Scott Reed went on to say, quote, I personally expect Jordan Birch to play Saturday. Big, big, big for them to have him. If he can't go or if he's hobbled or slowed for any reason, definite advantage to Ohio State. Kyle, the Ohio State offensive line has looked really good the last few weeks. I've seen some people, we owe, Justin Fryar an apology. And I was like, well, that's Chip. It's Chip. We all told you it was going to be Chip, and it's Chip. And I feel like you might agree with that. What have we seen from that unit lately that's given you optimism?
Well, a couple of different things. One is that Chip factor right away, which we can all see, which is just diversity in the run game. Like, they're just doing things and manipulating the defense to make life easier, to make those blocks first and foremost. Do not sleep on the effect of having a guy in Will Howard who can run the football himself. And so that allows you to option the ball, and that's one less guy you got to block. So if you're, if it's Birch, and especially if Birch is not, full strength, I wouldn't be shocked to see Ohio State option him a ton and make him have to play laterally, right? Make him have to make decisions and do all those things. Because if he's 6'6", 295, like, he's not going to be fun to block. So just option him. Like, that sounds great. And so that element is huge with Will's legs, but also Chip setting it up. But I think in pass protection, like, it's just a veteran unit. Like, adding Seth McLaughlin there has been huge. He just kind of solidified things. He calls things out at the line, and he's identifying, pressures that allows them to get into the right pass protection. It's never been for Ohio State a talent thing as much as fans like to harp on Justin Fry's recruiting because he didn't get a 5-star or something. Like, Ohio State still gets talented offensive linemen. It's not like, they're rolling out a MAC offensive line the last couple of years. Like, there's talent here. They just haven't lived up to it. And so I think with the scheme and the run game that's allowed them, but then I think just cleaning things up and having a veteran leader in the middle has allowed them to look better. I think Josh Simmons has been awesome. We talked about Fryar a little bit earlier, but we didn't talk about Simmons, who to me has been awesome, especially in pass pro. Like, I think they feel good about leaving him on an island against whoever the best pass rusher is to that side. And they're willing to take their chances. And I think so. It's veteran leadership. It's some scheme, and it's having a quarterback there who knows, is comfortable and has the ability to extend plays.
The red zone is something I want to look at because Ohio State, Chris, has been darn near perfect offensively in the red zone. And, oh, by the way, really, really, really good defensively in the red zone as well. Third in FBS defensively, just 3 touchdowns, 0 field goals, allowed on 5 tries. Offensively, 21 trips, 20 touchdowns. I mean, that's like 20 touchdowns, 1 field goal. Like, you don't see that. Like, that's such a anomaly. And I know they haven't played world beaters, but Oregon, 105th in opposing red zone D scoring, just 94th in red zone scoring themselves. This, Chris, looks to me like an area where Ohio State can tilt the margin.
Yeah, when I turned in my prediction, red zone on both sides of the ball was a reason why I have Ohio State winning by 8. I feel like you mentioned Ohio State's competition, but I just still feel like the plan inside the red zone this year is so much different and so much better. A lot of that is Chip, and I think a ton of that is also Will Howard. Will Howard somewhat sneakily, has a rushing touchdown in the last 4 games. They're all obviously red zone touchdowns. I think he's been huge in that regard. Just kind of changes the numbers and keeps it's just something you have to account for that defenses did not have to account for at all last year. So I feel like, like we talked about Gabriel, maybe he's the more overall talented, quarterback. He's certainly the more accomplished at this point. But I think at winning time in the red zone, I think that Howard is, especially the way he's deployed so far by Kelly, is a much better weapon down there than what Gabriel has proven to be. I think Kyle might have mentioned it, but all 3 of Gabriel's interceptions this year are in the red zone. So, as the field gets a little shorter, he gets a little, maybe a little more skittish, at least so far this year, whereas I think Howard has thrived down there. So, I like that matchup. And then you just think about Ohio State's defense on top of what maybe some of Gabriel's shortcomings have been so far this year. Ohio State's been really good on the few chances they've had to, had to stiffen up down there. And I think forcing Oregon into field goals, if you get some touchdowns down in there, because Oregon's going to, I think at least, Oregon's going to move the ball. Mm-hmm. But when it comes time to score touchdowns instead of settle for field goals, what's going to happen? I'm putting my money on Ransom and Downs and the defensive front to make Oregon kick field goals.
Love that edge there, Kyle. Another edge, Ohio State's offensive strength. You're talking RPO, play action, screens, things like that, is Oregon's biggest defensive weakness.
Yeah, I think to Will Howard point, what he's been best at is the decision making when it comes to these RPOs, right? Like that hasn't been a huge part of Ohio State's offense, really, ever. They've had them, obviously. It's not that they didn't run them, but I think it wasn't even the Chip Kelly edition, because Chip didn't run them this often when he was at UCLA. It's Will Howard. Like that's the difference. That's his strength. I'm going to find the guy I need to read. Maybe it's a linebacker, it's a safety, whoever it is. And I'm just going to bring the ball the other way wherever wherever he's not going, that's where the ball's going. And he's been accurate. There was a 4th and 3 against Iowa last week where, Iowa brought both safeties up in the box. They were ready to spill, to cover up the run. He threw an absolute dart on a slant behind. It was an RPO. It was, they read the outside linebacker and he put it right between the ones on Brandon Ennis's jersey. I mean, you could not have asked for a better, more on time throw, and they drive kept moving. They scored a touchdown. I think that was still pretty early. It might have still been 7-0 or, maybe 14-0 at that point. So I think they're going to rely on that. Now, Oregon, what they do, it showed up on the film before I saw the stats that that's their weakness defensively. They just try to do so much because of that Dan Lanning. They've got a huge playbook. They try to be in a perfect call at all times, right? Where, if you motion a receiver across, they're going to change their call because we want to be in this look against this formation and these blah, 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 blah. And you can see Michigan State take advantage of it. Like Michigan State does not have a quarterback who you can rely on to make good decisions. And even they were, Child is talented, but he's not exactly the best decision maker yet. And they were taking advantage. They were picking that Oregon defense apart. And, so that's a place where you look at and you go, okay, if you're going to load the box, just like we talked about, you load the box up against Jordan James, you load the box up against Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Great. We're going to throw slants to Buka. We're going to throw quick outs to Jeremiah Smith, to Carnell Tate. Like Will Howard's more than happy to distribute the ball that way. And so that's, I think, to me, the biggest place where Ohio State can take advantage in this whole game. And that could be the difference.
Yeah. Will Howard, let's talk about him, Chris. He's got an interception in each of his last 3 games. Seems like he gets like one bad throw and you're like, okay, Will, get it out of your system, or whenever it comes, it happens. But other than that, he's been really, really good. Consecutive completions in every game, like good runs, 5 touchdown performance. If you factor in his runs and throws against Iowa, you mentioned he's, got a rushing touchdown in 4 straight games. The first Buckeye to do that as a quarterback since Justin Fields had rushing touchdowns in the first 6 games of 2019. Do you think he's ready for this moment?
I do. I think the evidence points to it. I mean, I will say I want to see it. Coming into the year, it was offensive line and quarterback. How do we feel about these two things? I will say, as good as I feel about Howard, I feel even a little bit better about the offensive line at this point. So I do want to see Howard do it in a big game, but my confidence level that he can and will do it is probably higher than I thought it would be in August heading into this game, right? For, better or worse. I just feel like that's where my own mind is and what I was expecting from Will Howard. I feel like if Ohio State doesn't lose the turnover margin, they're going to be in really, really good shape on Saturday. But that does start with Howard taking care of the ball. And if there is going to be an interception, it can't be something at the wrong place of the field, a la, McCord, Michigan. Like, it's got to be, you got to minimize the damage if it happens. But yeah, to directly answer your question, I'm feeling pretty good that Howard is ready to take this step. And every time I hear Kyle break down his film, whether it's on this show or whether it's the film study, it's just building my confidence, because this is a cerebral dude that, just knows the game.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to put you both on the spot before we move on. What's your score?
34-10. I'm sorry. Yeah, 34-24. Ohio State wins by 10. My fault. 34-24.
I thought you were 34-10. I was like, whoa. Well, let's put
34-24.
Let's put some money on it. Kyle thinking big. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fairly bullish, I feel like, but not as bullish as you. I turned in 31-23 because I just, like I said, I feel touchdowns in the red zone and I feel field goals in the red zone for Oregon. Jason?
I'm at 34-21. I think it's a one-score game, but Ohio State scores defensively in the fourth quarter to kind of salt the game away. We'd love to see that happen. Saturday night cannot get here quickly enough. Alumni of note, Phil Knight, obviously, Shoe Dog, founder, former CEO of Nike. Tinker Hatfield also went there, graduated about 20 years after Phil Knight. Tinker's the design dude at Nike forever, designed Air Jordans, and led a lot of their efforts. Lila Bell Wallace, class of 1917, co-founder of Reader's Digest. Old guys like us certainly remember those. Ty Burrell.
Are those still out there?
I don't know. You should see them at the grocery store all the time. I don't see those anymore. I see
the dentist office back in the day.
Ty Burrell attended, did not graduate, but Emmy winner for Modern Family. Caitlin Olsen, class of 97, Sweet D on Always Sunny in Philadelphia, announced last night as the game day guest picker for this weekend. So for one weekend only, I'll hate on Sweet D. Chuck Palahniuk, I might have butchered that name, but the author of the Fight Club, the book. Dinesh Gunwardena, probably going to butcher that too, class of 72. He's the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka. It's pretty cool. Kent Beck, class of 87, the father of agile software development. I'm sure both of you guys have bumped into that in the business world. And special mention, William Beatty Boyd did not go to Oregon, but was the president of Oregon when he gave the green light for the film Animal House to film on campus. Like, everyone in the world turned him down. Missouri was closed, and their president read the script. He's like, absolutely not. Oregon's like, we'll do it. We'll do it for $20,000, and you can even use my office to be the dean's office. So they were very gracious about that whole thing. And if you watch Animal House, that's where it takes place, University of Oregon. It's time for Rapid Five. 5 quick questions, 5 quick answers. Let's start with the first one. Who throws for more touchdowns tomorrow, Gabriel or Howard?
I'm just saying Howard. I think Jeremiah Smith, you guys hate on me for being skeptical at first, but he's certainly been worth it. And I think he comes down with at least a couple more. That's been the strength of this offense.
Yeah, I'll say Howard has more touchdowns. I won't be surprised if Gabriel has more yards.
Who's the best linebacker on Ohio State's roster right now?
I hate this question, but I will say Cody Simon. For now, in a month, it might be Arbel Reese.
Yeah, I feel like they were redundant. I think Simon is right now is the most polished, the one that you can count on the most to fulfill his assignment.
Got some Sunny haters in here. Wow. Autzen Stadium, tough place to play or overrated? Only seats 60K.
I think it's tough. It's they've got a nice shape. They got the big roof on it, which echoes. So it's like the opposite of the hole in the ground at Ann Arbor. Actually keeps sound in. So they've got a good record there. They've won some big games there over the years. I'd love to check it out for myself.
Yeah. I'll say overrated just to be different. The capacity is one thing, and James, I don't know how you say his last name, Crepia that does the across the field with us. I always read his stuff just in general throughout the season, and I heard him say that he didn't feel like it was a Beaver Stadium or an Ohio Stadium or one other one that's big. So based on him being there all the time, I'll say it's overrated.
I'm with you, Chris. I think how things get localized, like, oh, this town over's got the best cheesecake in 5 counties, and it's like, I feel like that's going on out there. It's like the best of the West Coast. They think it's but yeah, I'm with you. A little bit overrated. Next question. Playoff is swelling to 12 teams this year. What's the perfect field size?
16. I said it.
8. I said it.
16. I'm with 16. And I could probably my arm could be twisted to say 32 because I could see it getting bigger and better someday. And like, there could be nothing better than a 30. Can you imagine a 32 team banger at the end of the year? How fun that would be. But I'll take 16 in the near term. Last one, best sports movie of all time.
Major League. It's not a question.
Yeah, I had Major League at the top of my list. My sleeper's Wildcats. Goldie Hawn.
Ooh,
classic.
Good choice. Good choice.
That's one from the archives, man. That's one. I get it, Kyle. You're a Guardians guy. It's got to be Major League. I'm a hockey guy, so you'd expect me to say Slapshot or Miracle or something. But honestly, I think Hoosiers is my favorite sports movie of all time. And I'm not even a really big basketball dude. I mean, like Ohio State basketball, but like I just love the charm of that movie, man. I do. I love the charm. Are we going to count Caddyshack as a sports movie? Can we? I had
that jotted down. I don't think that's a sports movie.
It's kind of loose sports. It's about as John Daly as you can get in sports. I think.
Chris hates golf. Everyone, that's the takeaway. Chris hates golf.
He just hates Sonny. He loves golf. So the big stories this week, we've got Michigan wobbling in the number 1 spot, and honestly, it could be Michigan slightly looking bad, and it would still be our number 1 spot. Any chance we can get to pile on those clowns? Lost 27-17 at Washington. They thought Jack Tuttle was it for a hot minute, and he was not it. Went 10 of 18 with a bad pick and a bad fumble in that game. Still likely a better option than Alex Orji. It's crazy. So like, I think one of us would be a better option right now than Alex Orji. Like, I've never seen a college quarterback pass. I mean, Craig Krenzel looked like Dan Marino next to Alex Orji. Like, he could sling the ball next to Alex Orji. And, Wolverines are 4-2, guys. Could easily be 2-4 right now with that 4th down run they used to beat USC late. And they got the miracle offside call that caused the Big Ten to change officiating rules on offside kicks against Minnesota. They could be 2-4. Clearly a team with problems. I don't know if we've got the time to diagnose it, but I want to look at the rest of the calendar for them, the rest of the schedule. Off this week, at number 23 Illinois next week. Then they get Sparty at home. Then Oregon at home, and then they're at number 18, Indiana, Northwestern at home, and they end the season in Columbus against number 2, Ohio State. I'm looking at that, and I'm like, there's only 2 games I think they're going to be favored in out of those 6. And I think that's the Michigan State and Northwestern game. They're definitely going to be underdogs to Ohio State, definitely going to be underdogs to Indiana. Same with Oregon. Illinois, they're underdogs this I think the line was -2 last I saw. That's next week. Could easily be a 6-6 team. Could even easily, how am I going to say this? Could also be a 4-8 team. Like if they do that USC and Minnesota game, like, could you imagine winning the Natty and going 4-8 in your next season? Because are they going to get 7 wins? They're going to be 6-6 playing in like the worst bowl possible.
Yeah, I mean, Harbaugh left the cupboard bare. You know, like it's one thing to like have like a senior laden, veteran laden team. It's another thing to not have recruited a Division I caliber quarterback. Like, and that's basically what happened here is that, this guy is supposed to be a quarterback guru and like just plumb forgot to recruit one who's capable of throwing the ball at the Division I level. You said Jack Tuttle's not the answer. Well, like, no, he's still the answer. Like, he's going to start next week. Like, they've already said that he's now the starter. Like, they don't have anywhere else to go, man. Like,
we ride or die with Tuttle.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think Chris Olave feels about that? Where he's like, man, my old high school quarterback plays for Michigan now. Like, do I want him to succeed? I don't know. Like, he's probably got some mixed feelings. Someone should ask.
Chris, Kyle talked about, Harbaugh leaving the cupboard bare. What else changed?
I don't know. It's weird. Leaving the cupboard bare, in all seriousness, it wasn't just players. It was also coaches, right? He took all the coaches that were good.
All the spies got kicked off the staff.
Leaving because they were all like 25. But then, when you're not blatantly cheating and you stop doing then that's going to be a problem as well. But they have no Jimmies and Joes, and they don't really have any X's and O's either.
Next up, PJ Flex, massive balls. Love talking about this topic. Guy was robbed 2 weeks ago in Ann Arbor. Should have got that onside kick for the win. Last week, tied at 17 late in the 4th with USC facing 4th and 1 at home. Quarterback sneak. Could have put up the field goal. The easy kick to go up 20-17, make a team drive on you. He goes for it, man. And they go up 24-17 with 56 seconds to play. that lead would hold on. Post game, he said, "How often do you have an inch to go to beat USC?" Good question, man. I'm glad he went for it. I struggle with PJ, Chris. There are times when I love his antics, and there are times I'm like, man, what are you doing, bro? Because he loses so many close games, and he's just like very theatrical. But other times, like beating USC, that was fun.
Yeah, it was sticky. USC sucks, though. I mean, beating them at home by, a couple points, good. Congrats. I mean, I'm sure it's a big deal for Minnesota, but USC is not very good. Just because they don't have Grinch as their coordinator, it's like we all think they're just better, and they are maybe a little. But what is Riley right now? He's 5-7 in his last 12 games. I think I saw a tweet. Yeah, I mean that's USC is what they're nothing. So good for PJ, I guess. But yeah, I'm indifferent on that dude. They're irrelevant program.
Let's talk about Indiana, the nation's first bowl eligible team. 6-0 off this week. All alone atop the Big Ten at 3-0, looking down at everyone. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, you name it. They're all below Indiana right now. Put up 41 in every single Big Ten game they've played, and they've won every game by at least 2 scores. Looking at what they have next. Nebraska next week. Washington at home on the 26th. They got to go to Sparty. They get Michigan in Bloomington. Got to go to Ohio State. That'll be a tough one. They finish with Purdue, probably the worst Big Ten team we've seen in a long time. That's a W. They're likely, it's like the inverse of Michigan. They're likely going to be favored in every one of those games but the Ohio State game. Are you guys ready for 11 Windiana?
I mean, that offense is fun. Like it's good. It's legit good. Like I kind of want to talk to I don't know if there are that many, but like give me like an OU grad and like tell me about like how do you feel about Curtis Rourke glowing up at this level, because he's balling. Like he's going to be all Big Ten. Like he's got a chance to be the first team all Big Ten quarterback, and it's because they're throwing the heck out of the ball. I still have some concerns about the defense and its ability to stand up, and like you could convince me that a couple of those teams like Washington, drops 35 or 40 on that team, and that's kind of that. But yeah, like that, they're fun, they're exciting, and the schedule is doing them a lot of favors the way it is not doing it for Michigan.
They're still just plus 350 to make the CFP right now, Chris. ESPN's playoff predictor has them at 52%. But if you go through that playoff predictor at ESPN and say, okay, I got them winning every game at Ohio State, all of a sudden 11-1 Indiana has a 97% chance to make the CFP, a 71% chance to host a first round game in Bloomington, Indiana. Like that sounds so weird to even say. Can you imagine? Like, come on, Dixie, bring your best to Bloomington. Let's play some playoff football. That's where we are right now. And Chris, for me, that was the whole point of expanding this field. You want a league or a sport where everyone can feel, or more teams at least, can feel like they have a chance to compete, have a chance to win something.
Yeah, it's obviously the benefit of the 16-team playoff is that it keeps those fringe programs in the mix for longer, just like baseball and every other league eventually does. I don't know that I see Indiana winning, as many of those games. They're going to stumble against somebody they probably shouldn't is my guess. But obviously, I don't think Michigan will be one they stumble on. But hey, maybe it's Washington, maybe it's Nebraska. There's going to be something in there, I think, where maybe it'll catch up to them because they've looked great and they're super fun to watch. But I don't know that they played a murderer's row, to this point. So we'll see how it goes. But easy to root for. I'm hoping they do. I mean, I have no quarrel with them. Like Minnesota, I really don't even care if they're they're just a program. Indiana right now is fun to watch and easy to cheer for.
Indeed. Got the shit talking coach and everything. Fun offense, shit talking coach. That's how you get fans. Looking at some games in the Big Ten this week. Washington at Iowa, Saturday noon on Fox. Hawkeyes favored by 3. Wisconsin at Rutgers, same time on BTN. Rutgers favored by 2.5. I feel like that's a big game for Rutgers. They dropped one at Nebraska and got that hot 4-0 start. Get back on it with a tough win over Wisconsin. And a little bit of a fun one in the afternoon tomorrow, 3:30 on CBS, number 4 Penn State at USC. Penn State's only favored by 4.
Yeah,
we'll get a really good kind of gauge of that time zone travel thing we've been talking about earlier in the show. Because I would expect Penn State to kind of roll with that game, but seeing it's only 4 has me a little bit concerned. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big show-out opportunity for Penn State for all the reasons that you, Chris, said. Like, I think we all think USC sucks, like legitimately. Like they're not a great team, and if Penn State's not going to put the hurt on it, if that offense is not going to separate in this game, regardless of being on the road. Like, it's a big helmet game. Their fans are going to be up for it. Their fans are traveling for it. I guarantee you that there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of blue in the Coliseum. So they're going to be up for this game. Like, they've had this circled for a while. And if they don't show up, like, what are we doing here? Like, what, is this a 9-3 Penn State again? The 10-2 who, finishes at the second or third place outside the playoffs. So I don't know. That's a big one. I'm really low key interested in that Wisconsin-Rutgers game. I think Rutgers is a lot better than people give them credit for. Like, they just play really hard. Like, Shiano's done a really good job coaching them, even if their offense is setting the game back, 100 years. Like, they're still really good. And I think it's a big test for our buddy Luke up in Madison. Like, things aren't going great up there right now. And, he's got to stop the snide if he wants to really, take command of that program and keep it near the top of the Big Ten.
Man, that's well said for Luke, because I do think that's a pressure game for him. That Penn State game for me is the one where because USC is not good. If Penn State doesn't cover in that game and look well, that is not kudos to USC. That is an indictment of Penn State.
And if they do get the W, they could possibly be the number 3 team in the country. And the reason for that is Ohio State and Oregon will play. One of those teams will drop. And then last weekend, pure chaos broke out. I think we all went into the weekend, and everyone did, saying, there's one ranked game this entire weekend. This is going to be total garbage. That was Mizzou at Texas A&M. Turned out to be one for the ages, as 5 teams ranked in the top 11 went down. Almost got a 6th. Miami pulled one out with a very generous call at Cal. Those games, Arkansas 19, Tennessee, number 4, Tennessee 14. Number 25, Texas A&M 41. Number 9, Missouri 10, just woodshedded them. Washington 27, number 10, Michigan 17. Michigan was severely overranked. We discussed that. Minnesota, another game we talked about, 24, number 11, USC 17. And then Vanderbilt 40, number 1, Alabama 35. Just an incredible weekend of college football. And that Vandy game was bananas. It was absolutely fun to watch. I mean, we all love the upsets. That's how your mind operates in the college sports world, is like, I love my team, and anyone else playing a ranked team that's not supposed to beat them. Those are your teams. Kalen DeBoer, man, they're mad at him. The fans are like, hey, we're mad that you wore a T-shirt on the sideline. We're also mad about the loss, but like, what else can we be mad about? Is that who he is? Is he going to be able to get his teams up for great games and then just not have the dog that Saban had that would not let his team drop this game?
Oh, you mean he's like Urban at Ohio State? Ooh, I said it. We remember the Purdue loss. We remember the Iowa loss. Like, which one do you want to be? I mean, the reality is
Virginia
like,
Tech.
How good is? Yeah, exactly. The reality, I think, is like, how good is this program actually going to be? I think what you're seeing, and I've always heard this from people who know better than me. Saban's greatest skill, and the reason he was so successful at Alabama, was not because of his schematics. It wasn't his recruiting. It was his ability to control and keep the Alabama booster fan base in line. And I think that was his number one trait. They gave him a fleet of car dealerships. That's how much he was able to control those guys. And I think you're seeing what happens when the new guy comes in, the new babysitter's here and the kids are acting up. And so, this is historically one of the most active, emotional, shall we say, fan bases in the sport, and which is really entertaining for those of us on the outside. And I think we've kind of forgotten that, the last 15 years, Saban kind of kept them in check. When you've got generations of people, and this is just how they are, man. This is the way that the Crimson Tide roll. And good luck, Kalen DeBoer. You signed up for this, my man.
Speaking of the Bama loss, Chris, how thankful is the SEC for Texas right now? I mean, that's a dogged out league without, that's the only unbeaten team in the It Just Means More conference.
Yeah, good timing for them to join. I want to know for Vandy, I saw they were selling the goalpost. You guys buy it? It was like $1,000 for a 2-inch slab and or a 2-inch cut, and like $4,000 or something for an 8-inch cut, something crazy like that. You guys pony up?
Little too pricey for me. The only 2 Vandy fans I know, a guy I used to play hockey with, went to school there, and then Nate Bargatze. I know he's a big Vanderbilt fan, but that's Kyle, did you get some of that goalpost?
No, I do applaud them though for instantly seeing like, hey, this can help our NIL opportunity / also paying the fine that the SEC gave them for
pay that
downs.
fine, right?
Yeah.
Genius.
I heard there's a story about the Predators coach like left work and just, the goalpost was coming right by as he was leaving the arena. And he was just like, oh, what are you guys doing? And didn't even, he was coaching like a preseason game, didn't even know. And they're like, we beat Bama, we're taking it down to the river. And I guess he like jumped in and helped them carry it for like a block because he was like, man, this is cool. It's what we do in Nashville.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
Why not? Looking at some of these national games, looks like, maybe 2-3 this week that are pairing ranked teams. Any of these games stand out to you guys you want to tune in for?
I mean, Red River's Red River. I mean, there's always chaos there. I hate to be the throw the record books out, but like there is just chaos. And I think if nothing else, Venables versus Sark is always just so fun because I think they know each other. They know what they do. And, that environment's another place that, we talked about wanting to get to Autzen. Like I would love to do one in that, whatever is left of the Cotton Bowl down there. I love that they still play it in that stadium and not at Jerry World. It's right at the fair. It's just like that's to me even if it's a blowout, it's just still something you want to watch because it's a little bit of like this is what this sport's all about, regardless of what conference they're in.
I love that. That's a great point for sure. I think Oklahoma's going to be down. Who's out? One of their wide receivers is out. They already had a ton of injuries preseason at wide receiver, so they're going to be a bit of a hole.
14.5-point dogs too.
Yeah. It's one I would like to see for sure. I hate that. I won't say I hate, but I dislike that Ole Miss and LSU's at the same time as Ohio State and Oregon because that's kind of like the overrated bowl. I'm very interested to see which one of those teams. It's like I actually like Lane Kiffin. I think he's awesome, but I think his team is overrated. But LSU, they're always overrated, and you want Brian Kelly to lose. So I'm kind of hoping Ole Miss can run it up there. I know they're favored by about a field goal or so, but yeah, I wish that was going to be a little easier for me to watch on Saturday.
Love both of those. I'll be tuning in tonight too. 10:30 Friday night. Number 16 Utah, Cam Rising is coming back for first game since being hurt earlier in the season.
Yeah, I'll probably get broken in half on the first.
He probably will get hurt tonight, but Arizona State's 4-1, and it's in Tempe, man. Who knows what's going to happen down there? Be tuning in for that one for sure. All right, folks, it's time for our favorite part of the show. What's your price? We dive into the things in life we could do for the right price. We're talking about the fun, harmless stuff that doesn't hurt anyone or break the law, like driving 10 miles an hour under the speed limit for an entire year or entering a professional slap contest. So what's your price? And as we've done all season long, we're going to make these, Ohio State football theme. Off season, we'll get back into the gross stuff again. We'll do all that nasty stuff. But like during the season, we try to keep it proper. So I've got a fun one, Kyle. We're a little bit older than you, but we're all three older and don't tend to sleep on couches or crash at friends' houses anymore. And we're creatures of our own bed type comfort in life. That's where we are right now. Like I recently got a nice shoehorn. And let me tell you, like I refuse to put any shoes on without it now. Like I'm like, this thing's great. Like I went basically 95% of my life without even thinking about one of these things. Now I'm like, I can't believe I live without it. It's heaven.
I got one for high tops. Not for. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing it for low tops, I'm not really sure. But if you don't want to like crease the backs too much on high tops, for sure, I like that.
Yeah, bust it out. So anyway, with that prelude, what I'm getting at is we like our own beds. We like comfortable things. We're older. So what is your price, gentlemen, to make the 36-hour drive to Eugene to go see the game nonstop with 3 buddies? So you're not going to see, it's nonstop. You're not going to be stopping to see the biggest ball of yarn or whatever, twine. You're not going to be going to Great Salt Lake. You're not going to be stopping in, Glacier for a couple of days. You're driving nonstop to get to the game. You're in a car, not a big vehicle. You've got 3 buddies. So when you do catch a nap, it's going to be on one side of the back seat. What's your price to do that? What would someone have to pay you at this stage of life to do that?
I have 2 questions. I have 2 very important questions. Do I have to make the return trip the same way? Because that's a hugely important part of this. Like if I've got to do like 36 hours straight, go to the game, 36 hours back, that's a very different price than 36 there. And I fly home or I get to take my time. So I need to know what is the backside of this trip looking like before I commit?
That's a good question. Let's make it interesting. I don't want you to fly home because that's too easy. You get a first class flight, you fly home, you're laying down. No, you can drive home, but you don't have to do it nonstop. You still have to drive your ass home, and you're going to be tired. That trip sucks, man. I've driven across the country a couple of times in my life, and it's a long, long time. So you do have to drive home. You don't have to do it nonstop. How's that?
Okay. If I can pick the 3 buddies, my cost or my price is whatever the costs are. So like gas, food, all that stuff. And then whatever the going rate is, which I know is not cheap right now. Like give me the 4 best seats in Autzen, like whatever that costs. And that might be $2,000 or whatever it is. But if I know we're going to have the 4 best seats in that stadium, I'm down. Like I don't mind to drive. Like I prefer to fly, but like maybe, and I know I'm weird, but like I don't have a problem doing the 36-hour drive. Like I think it'd be fun. But again, if I got to do 36 hours, go to the game, get right back in the car, do 36 hours without a good night's sleep, without a good hotel to sleep in. As long as I can get a good night's sleep before I got to make the return trip, and I can, break it up a little bit on the back. It's a pretty low number for me. This is not exciting, for the sake of the game. I'll put it that way.
That's a good answer. I like how you made it the price of 4 good seats. I still think you're undervaluing how shitty that trip is going to be.
Yeah,
there and back.
In the car, like that's
getting like sleep on like a like where the seatbelt is. Like, man, there's like French fries on the floor. Like, I don't think that you are adequately understanding how
the car makes a difference. Like if we're in like an old Corolla versus like a nice like SUV, big difference here. So again, like what are we working with vehicle wise? Like if it's my car, I'm not going to reveal any details. Like, but I'm feeling good about that. Like I feel good about my vehicle situation.
Right. For the sake of this exercise, that it's the type of car you or your friends would have had when you would have considered this on a spontaneous move. Like, hey guys, let's drive to Vegas. Like that time of your life, it's one of those cars.
Then I need like an extra $5,000,
but guaranteed not to
like that. yeah. AAA platinum.
You're $7,000.
Come with it. Yeah.
$7,000. So $2,000 to buy tickets. I like the tickets. I think that's a great idea. And 7. That's a little expensive. I'm figuring I'm not going to do it for cheap, but I figure I could do it for cheaper than $7,000. You're going to
give me my car.
Kyle's number is $7,000.
$7,000 for Kyle. He's in a Corolla and he just jacked his price.
If I'm in a crappy Corolla, yeah.
Corollas aren't crappy. No one listen to this man.
No, I had a Corolla, but like, look, I don't fit in the back seat of a Corolla and like take a nap. Like, like that's the challenge here. Again,
no, it's gonna suck. Yeah, it's gonna totally suck. Chris, where you
I'm still trying to figure out Kyle's. Was it $7,000 of profit after he's paid for tickets?
No,
and everything? Like, I'm just not sure of his bid.
Well, because that's going to pay for my AAA Platinum membership and, the guaranteeing that I don't break down and any of that issues. So like, no, the real number is $2,000 or whatever the tickets cost. It was a crappy Corolla. Like, it's probably not actually $5,000. It's probably like an extra $1,000 or $2,000 is what I would do it for. Assuming again, on the way back, I get to actually sleep in a real bed and not the back seat of a Corolla for 4 days or whatever it is.
That's the kind of money we can raise too. Like we might have to film this. Kyle goes to Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, and he's got a shorter drive too. Cause he's taking his buddies from Chicago. We'd be taking.
No, we'd have to make him fly to Columbus first and then drive here.
And go right back up to I-80. So I'm like now, I'm right by my house already. So this is going to be great.
Well, the key part of the question was 36-hour drive, not 30-hour drive, 36-hour drive.
You did say.
So you have to fly to Columbus on a little a 3 seat per row plane with turboprops on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Man, yeah, it's the ride. Right. It's the ride back, no matter how you break it up, that really sucks, and the car. Because you're going to be done at least an SUV to be able to lay back a little bit. That's a day and a half in the car.
And that ride there is not too bad because you're buddies, you got energy, you're happy, you're excited, you're going to have fun. There's going to be some junk food in the car, and you get some funny jokes, some good music. But after the game, and you're like, oh God, even flights back from vacation suck compared to flights to vacation. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, $7,000's too low is basically.
You wouldn't do it for 7. Money bags over here. Damn.
Yeah, I probably need 10 to go through all that.
There's a bunch of people watching the show just can't even identify with what's going on. They're like, "What's?" I think I would.
They don't
do it for
identify with your
35.
shoehorn either.
They should, man. They really should. If they get a shoehorn, their life will change. I can promise you that. I'm in there for 3,500.
Oh, 3,500. I thought you were saying 35,000.
No, that's to
I'll
walk.
do it for
That's to
35.
walk to Eugene.
Yeah, I'll do it for 35,000. That sounds great. I'll ride my bike there.
I think those catch and sleep, and then it's my turn to drive again. Oh, but I only slept like 10% of my time when I was supposed to be sleeping. Like that's going to suck. We're old. Like all these restroom breaks, like stretching the legs that have gone like stiff and they hurt now. And like, your body just breaking on the way there. No way. 3,500. I do it for 3,500, and that buys my friends tickets. And
I'm really excited. I'm really excited for 2 years from now.
You're going to sit on his lap because you're in a Corolla.
3 in the back row, buddy.
Well, I'm excited for 2 years from now.
I feel like we got to make this happen, man.
Yeah, at Oregon the next time, and the 3 of us and Johnny or something like that are driving, and Dan are driving all the way to Eugene. We're testing this all out. We're gonna record the next one of these in 2 years in the back seat of the Corolla. It's gonna be terrible.
Keep like the 40 hours before kickoff ahead, clear on your schedule, because we will absolutely do this, and we'll film it, and it'll be a web series. It'll be fun. I think that's it, man. Big show tonight. We talked about so much, but given the game, I felt like we had to get into this stuff, and I'm glad we did. And thanks, guys, for bringing so much to the show. A lot of good insight, a lot of good stuff that I hadn't thought of. Forget anything?
Let's get ready
Go
for
Guardians.
It's almost here, man. Almost here. Go Guards. As always, take care of each other. Be good to each other. Go Bucks.